Start, or will I start? Welcome, everyone, to another week of the RANT webinars, which is funded by the Australian government through the Future Drought Fund, and we're connected to the Tasmanian Drought Hub. I've forgotten, how do I thank acknowledge all the country that we're working on, so sort of right up in New South Wales all the way down to the bottom of Tasmania. And how good a condition the land's been left in for us to turn it and work back to where it was when we got here and then improve it from there. So hey, I'm going to introduce Stephen. I won't take a second. I've known Stephen Hobbs 10 years. I was trying to think, 10, 15, something like that. He farms at Caniva with his family, and they run cropping and sheep. And we've worked together sort of designing his enterprises and talking about a lot of stuff. So it's been really good. And what he's got to share, I think, is really significant for increasing farmers' resilience, because it allows you to increase your profit at lower stocking numbers. So increase your profit, so it increases your resilience and that. And so we went back and forwards quite a few times to sort of get started on it. But I'll let Stephen describe all that. He'll probably describe it better than I. So if that's okay, Stephen, I'll hand over to you.
Yep. No, thank you, Graham. Thanks for the invitation. And I've been working with Graham off and on for quite a while, and so I'm hoping to cover a bit of a story about it all, and I hope that you can get some ideas about how you might be able to apply some of the things that we've done in your business. If I know it's really helped me out, and Graham and a couple of others have been really instrumental in helping me to make the changes and to help me work through it. And so thank you very much for your help too, Graham. Right. Yeah. Now that's all working, is it? That's come through?
Not yet.
Oh, righto, hang on. I'll minimize that again. Share. Try again.
Yes, looks lovely.
Beautiful.
Coming up?
Yep.
I didn't click the share button hard enough. Right. So yes, the title is advertised as using individual animal identification for profit and regeneration. And so in the presentation, the three questions that I'd like to try and cover: why did I adopt the use of EID? And then I've got a few slides and some pictures, and I'd like to show you how about I went setting up for EID on the farm. And then the last question is that I'll probably pose the question to all of you after you've seen what I've done, and I'll let you answer whether you think there's any benefit in adopting EID. But from my perspective, I'm very biased. I would recommend it hands down to anyone, but I want you to decide whether you see that if there's something of benefit for you in it. So we'll start off with why did I adopt EID? And this is really the reason why.
Stephen, could I ask what the E stands for?
Electronic identification.
Electronic. Great, thank you.
Yeah, in the E-tag. Yeah. So basically, this is a data set. I wanted to. We used to have discussions about the rain, and the old fellas would talk about how it always rain on the 26th of April, Anzac Day, and to be honest, I'm 56 years old now. Never seen it break on Anzac Day, and I was really sort of wondering whether it was mythical or something, or whether I just born at an unfortunate time. And so a friend of mine who was a bank manager at NAB, when they closed the bank, he gave me Caniva's rainfall figures, and unfortunately, when Dad and Grandpa used to measure the weather, they would go out and look at it, and and then just empty the rain gauge on the ground and not write it down. So in 1980, Mum got on my case, and she gave me a book and ruled it up, and it was my job to record the weather. So we've got our actual rainfall data that I've collected from 1980 onwards. But you can see that there's a fairly so red line here is our average over the 100 odd years, 130 years, wherever it is, and the lines, the dots, sorry, that fall between the 200 and 300 mil rainfall, they all line up with our droughts. So when I ask the old fellas, when were the droughts that you remember, the droughts, these are the years here. You can see those. Now, what's really interesting is that 1982 was the most significant drought I can remember. The dust storms coming across, and you know, we couldn't see out our windows of the house for hours. They were just brown, like someone had painted them with paint, brown paint. And that sort of sparked the catalyst for a lot of change. And then ever since then, there's been this whole series of droughts or below average rainfall, whereas historically it was quite normal that you'd have, you know, a few dry years, a drought, and then you'd have a whole series of years at or over average rainfall to recharge and build up your soil moisture again. And but I can see that ever since I've really started farming, I've had either dry years or a drought. And when I look at it statistically, I've had experienced a drought once every 3 years since I've been farming. But to summarise that, there's been a 20% decline in the annual rainfall. This is since 1990. A 22% decline in our growing season. The real kick in the guts has been the frost. Our frost season has gone from 90 to 100 days out to 142 days now. So that's from the first frost to the last frost. So that means now that the majority of our frosts are now occurring in spring, around about between the 18th to the 25th of October, when our crops are flowering. So, but at least by recording the data and knowing it, we can try and manipulate some of that by shifting our sowing date. But it's been one of the key things that has helped to identify the need to move towards livestock. And we can see here that the talk that has been quite on everyone's lips is about when it is the rain coming. And when I look at my rainfall records since 2000, the average date of the seasonal break here on my farm is the 28th of May. And the seasonal break is defined as a single or multiple rainfall events that exceed 20 millimetres of rainfall. So we can see that the break is getting later. Now, when Graham came out, we sat down and we went through and did a business plan, and you can see quite a lot of the points. I've summarised them from there. So I guess what was really obvious, because of all those late season frosts, we were losing quite a lot of our crops at the tail end of the season, and this one, point number 2, the cost of growing crops was too high in proportion to the risk that we were exposed to, is really rang true. And so it came back to this point number 1, that really was crucial to manage for risk. You lower the cost, you lower your risk. The more money you spend, the higher your risk. And then we looked at the enterprise mix. And ironically, when Dad started farming, he was around about 30% cropping and 70% sheep. And then when I left school, we bought our tractor with a cabin on it. And had a tape deck, and all of a sudden, young fellas like sitting on tractors and listening to the top 40 or whatever, and it started to go a bit more to the cropping enterprise, and of course that's really good while you're getting the rain, but later breaks, unpredictable springs, and then frosts really have made the cropping quite tricky. Our average rainfall here is around about 340 millimetres, of which 240 40 is growing season, so we're not a very as a higher rainfall area is what a lot of people believe. That it's been regarded historically as a 16 to 18 inch rainfall area, but I've never really seen that as far as an average goes. Some other points there were in relation to chemical resistance and the frosting is that if we grow grass, well, it doesn't really matter if it gets frosted because we're just after biomass, we're after feed for the sheep. And the other good thing too is I've never seen a weed become chemical resistant to a sheep's bite. And by carrying that cover, we can help prevent erosion and exposure to bare soil, and we can increase our soil function. And the other good thing about it too is that we can then start to look at regenerating our perennial grasses, which are really important to helping build up our soil fertility. And I'll show you a slide a little bit later about that. But another thing that we needed was to select better animals that would be suitable to this type of farming. Really a crucial one was the point about running more profitable sheep. It wasn't until we started using EID that because we had no idea how much money each animal was making. And I was really surprised the first year that we did it. There was a $200 spread between the least profitable sheep and the most profitable sheep. The top sheep made me $240 in income, and the bottom sheep made me $40. And visually, you couldn't pick them. It also then allows you to start thinking about diversifying income stream as you build your soil function up. But a really important point is it has to be easy. Otherwise, you won't do it. And I'm very much like that. If something's difficult, just go, oh, bugger it, I'll just do something that's easier. But it all comes down to this. This summarizes it here. What we wanted to do is identify and keep the best performing animals, sell the underperformers, but most importantly, when things get tough and you have to start looking at destocking, I want to be able to identify the good animals to keep and then destock down to market value. And to do that by eye is impossible. You cannot do it. Just to add another little thing in here, this is really good, but you will notice a lot of these points all relate to sheep. And one of the major problems I have is that I didn't like sheep. So to say that we need to go to more sheep was a bit of like a slap in the face with a wet fish. So then once we identified these things, and I had the realization that if I wanted to continue on, that sheep were going to be a really important part. They're going to be the bread and butter of the enterprise mix. And as Graham pointed out to me quite diligently on a number of times, that electronic identification is going to be extremely important in this. And so these were some of the things that came up. And Graham calls them barriers to adoption. But firstly, what is stopping me from doing it? And one of the big things that was stopping me is that I just simply didn't like sheep. But one of the key things, and it came apparent later on when Graham and I were having a conversation, is that he was telling me, dropping some very big hints about buying an auto drafter and all this sort of stuff. And and Graham thought I was a tight ass and I didn't want to spend the money on it. But really what it was that I just didn't think it was going to work because, and I only realized this later, that the reason why sheep work is hard is because of the way that I was handling the sheep. And I think that's probably as ignorance on my behalf because I just did what Dad showed me. I didn't go to college about agriculture. I just did my time at with Dad on the farm and sort of learned it by rote. And it was quite normal to when you bring the sheep in, you'd go out with a salivating pack of the hounds of Baskerville and you'd run them in at as fast as could, and there'd be a motorbike honking and a ute tooting, and when you got them in the bottom yard, they'd be circling and all stirred up, and then you'd unleash the hounds, and next thing there'd be sheep going everywhere straight through the yards, and then you'd be yelling at the dogs, and then the dogs would be running off, and then the sheep going everywhere, and it just wasn't a pleasant experience. So that was one of the things. It was just that was a huge barrier for me. Then the other ones were like, so what gear do we do? Because I don't know anything about EID, and how much was it going to cost? And then it's got a computer on it, so it needs software. And what software do we need to run? And then finding the time to do the analysis and all this other stuff, it's just like another job on top of it all. And then if I go and set it all up and then it doesn't work, well, bloody hell, I'll just so it came down to, I felt like I needed less stress, not more, and I felt this was going to give me more stress. But anyhow, Graham persisted, and I thought, well, we better give it a crack. And so this is what we did. So he looked at the yards, and I decided if I'm going to use it, I have to set it up so that I can't bypass it and choose not to use it. So that it is the heart. So the sheep station is the heart of the sheep yards, and I cannot do anything in the sheep yards unless I'm using this. So it forces me to collect weight data every time we do sheep work. There's no option. I can't bypass it. The only thing that I can do is bypass for doing jetting. So you don't necessarily need to be individually scanning them and handling them. So I've got a jetting race around the corner, and but interestingly, it's actually easier to treat the flies for sheep in the through the auto drafter now, because when I put them up in the jetting race, the sheep keep putting their heads under each other's bums and lifting each other up in the air, because that's how they sort of go through the auto drafter, because there's nothing up the front. Person runs through and they just keep running. They just follow each other. And when you put them into a yard, a race to physically handle them, they're giving each other the shove to say, come on, get out of there. I want to run through, what are you doing hanging around? But yeah, the nature of the animal and how they function really changes once they become accustomed and realize that there's actually no one up the front. So all my sheep work now is done by one person. I've taken on a trainee this year, so I'm showing her how it works too. But normally all sheep work is done on my own with no dog. We've actually removed the dog from the yards because the dogs stir them up. And for a couple of years, we'd end up chaining the dog in the dead spot where the sheep would sort of hang. And so the dog would just sit there in the shade with a few bickies and a pot of water, and she'd look up occasionally and give a woof. And anyhow, so moving right along. So the good thing about it, so I've got a combi clamp in front of the auto drafter, but then rather than handling the sheep multiple times, I try to do as many operations as we can in one pass. So when we do the sheep, there might be a trace element or a drench for a fluke or something like that. And then we'll check their teeth and all that information, and you can actually add that into the auto drafter as you're going, as well as collecting your weights. And the beautiful thing about that then is you've got that data, and then you can start looking at your growth rates of your sheep and when they grow and their maturity and all those other things. But I won't get too sidetracked with that now. But that's the beauty of it, is you try to do as many operations as you can in one pass. Now, this is a video I'm going to share. It'll probably be a little bit shuddery, and I apologise for that. But it gives you a bit of an idea of how the animals run. So this is, I think I took this about 3 or 4 years ago. So that these used only been familiar with this for 18 months or so, but they soon get the hang of it. And I just want you to listen, because you won't hear me yelling and you won't hear the dog barking, because there is no dog. So it's not the fastest, but I should tell you, when we were doing that sheep work that day, it was getting a bit warm, so I went off to the shed to get a drink of water, and I came back. I just left the gates open, and here they were, just going through the yards, and I wasn't even there. And yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Self-grafting sheep. But this is the question I would like to pose to you. So looking at these sheep, can you choose which ewes in there are the most profitable ones? By eye. I can't pick. And I have my doubts that you could pick them either, but with EID, my auto drafter can pick them. And this is the beauty of it. I'm just taking a bit of a snapshot. So what we do is that we actually create a league table. So we know the date of the drop of each ewe, and we know how much wool she cut that year, the lamb value that she produced that year, and then we have an average column, and then we just keep doing that every year, and we keep averaging it. So the ewe always has a current average value of what income she has generated to date, and then we rank them into deciles. Now, so these one here are the top 10% of the ewes, and down the bottom with the bottom 10%. But what's interesting that we can see here that and that's great looking at this too, because you can start to understand what are some of the things that contribute to the value of that ewe or the income that she produces. And here you can see that there's a 2017 ewe. Because I joined them as maidens, so they're about 18 months old. So she produced nothing the first year, but the first year she was joined, well, she had a couple of lambs, and she cut me $62 worth of wool as well. So she made $285 for me that year. And then the following year, she had another couple of lambs, but the lamb value is a bit lower, and I can correlate that back to another table. But so she was sitting on an average of $253 after 2 years. Whereas here, this ewe here in 27, or was the 2013 ewe, right? So she's had a few more runs on the board, but she's only averaging me $117. So the beautiful thing about this is that if I need, I can look at the satellite imagery and see how much standing dry matter I've got left in my paddocks. I know how many grazing days I've got ahead of me, and if I say, right, I need to get rid of 100 or 200 ewes to bring me down so that I can maintain enough feed in front of me without having to buy it in. I can then talk to the stock agent and say, so how much are sheep selling for at the stock market, at the market at the moment? And he might say, oh yeah, they're selling for $150. So then what I can do is I can go to my auto drafter, and program $150 in there, run my big mob of ewes, and that's the other beauty of it. I'll run all the ewes as one big mob except for lambing time. Run them through, set the auto drafter at $150 or below, and every ewe that hasn't generated $150 will come out. I will then send her off to the market and basically sell her for $150. And then I've kept my top stock, which make me the income. And the beauty about it is that I'm not really worried about how the animal generates that income. It could be from wool, it could be from lambs, it could be from both. You can see in here, there was one ewe, she cut me, I don't think, it was around about $80 worth of wool 1 year. I know the highest one here is $66 in this sample, but there was a ewe that just consistently cut, an 8.5 kilo fleece and had one lamb. And that's how she generated her income. But having this is just so powerful, especially when it comes to dry times, in that you can sell your lower income generating animals, realize the capital from that, and not be spending money on having to buy in feed. And then when it rains and it comes good, you'll bounce back quicker because you've got your most profitable animals there ready
Stephen,
to go.
There's just a question from Ian about how do you manage animals that lose their tags, and I mean, my add on to that, is that a common thing?
Yeah, I double tag now. So only do that with the ewes. So the EID tag, there's no compulsion for you to go year of birth colour. I just stick to yellow for my EID. It's easy to see. When we had the non-EID tags, I used to go to year of birth colour, and you find something get really grubby and dirty and hard to read. So I stick with yellow with the EID tag in their left ear, and then in the right ear I use a year of birth colour tag, and they all have a number, and so the tag will start off at 1 and go up to 450. So I order them every year, and we double tag. And so if the tag gets ripped out, we can then cross correlate the data. And so we don't use the data. I've only just been doing that for the last 3 years. But that was an issue. And I'm really surprised at how many, occasionally you'll just get a batch of tags where you have a few dead ones. And then the next year's tags are really good. And they'll last their entire life. But yeah, having that double tag is really, really crucial to be able to have your data and keep it on hand and not lose it, because it's useless if you lose it. Just to give you a bit of an idea, this is just some visuals of what we're collecting, but by running the ewes through the auto drafter and collecting their weights, and when we scan, we also put in their preg status into the auto drafter as well. From that, we're able to calculate the fertility and fecundity of the ewes. So we know how many fetuses there are per 100 ewes. And we're also able to calculate the fertility from that as well too. So we know what their optimum weight range is. So that's really handy, because post-shearing, we put them into the intensive grazing, the strip grazing, with the intention of getting them up to their optimum joining weight, which I know is between 60 and 75 kilos. If I get them there, I've got the optimum weight for joining. And then you can start to look at your embryo conversion. And, when they're scanned, how many embryos you got, and then when you mark your lambs, how many lambs you've got. You can work out your embryo conversions, and then you can start looking at your paddocks and saying, have I got an issue? Can I improve my embryo conversion? Really important, because I'm selecting for earlier maturity ewes. I don't want them to grow bigger, but I want them to mature earlier. And that works in beautifully if you know what your breeding objectives are. And I'd really strongly urge everybody to stand and think about what breeding objectives should they be looking at for their livestock. Then you can start calculating, dollars per kilogram of rainfall, per sire, all that sort of stuff, fleece weights. This year, I made the decision not to use Regulin. I normally use Regulin in the maidens, and that has been because we just haven't been able to get them quite up to their optimum joining weight. But the last 18 months, we've actually got them almost up to their adult weight. But I've found if I can get them to 75, 80% of their adult weight, their projected adult weight, we don't need to use Regulin to help them bring them in and cycle. But yeah, most importantly, we're using the EID to increase the profit per ewe. So here's an example of using their weight and scanning data to calculate fertility and fecundity. So you can see here that our optimum fertility is in this weight range here of 60 to 75 kilos. And, 65 to 70, we've got 152 or 152 fetuses per 100 ewes. So it's really really powerful, this type of information, because you know what weight range you need to be targeting to get your optimum fertility for your ewes, your joining rates. And then the fertility comes back here with your fecundity. And here's a short video of showing how we collect data at lamb marking. Yeah, so basically when we're landmarking, we're collecting their sex, their sire, whether a single or a twin, and if there's any other things like an overshot jaw, an undershot jaw, black patch or a gammy leg or anything like that, you can record all that and add it to there. We've also looked, because I wanted to move away from mulesing, so we're looking at doing breech scores as well and wrinkle as well. So, and then we can relate that information back to the sire, so we can know which fella's leaving the wrinkly bums and all that sort of thing. So it's, yeah, really powerful stuff. And then when you've got their weight at marking, then every time you bring that animal in, you're able to calculate what its growth rate is. And so, and from that, every time they're handled and weighed, you then can see when their growth rates occur. And that gives you an insight into their maturity. So we then start looking at retaining those ewes that are earlier maturing. And this is just a sample here of some of the data. So we've got our size up here. We know how many ewes in the singles and lambs and the percentages. So obviously in this mob here, the scanner let a few multiples go through to the wicket keeper. So it's a bit hard to get 112% lambs out of a single mob when you know they've only got one lamb or one fetus. But yeah, no, it's powerful stuff. And then you can calculate your lambing percentages for each of your sires and your joining groups, and then you can calculate your average lambing percentage. So it's interesting, but prior to 2017, prior to doing this, our normal lamb marking rate was 80%. And we shifted up to 122% within 4 years, which is terrific because we didn't have to run more ewes. We were producing more lambs from less ewes by keeping the most fertile and reproductive ewes. And this is an example here of using the information, the marking information and the scanning information to then look at your embryo conversion. So we can see here, we're in our 50s and 60s. So then all of a sudden you can start looking at it and saying, so how can I improve my embryo survival? Is it feed? Is it a lack of water? Is it shelter? Is it the paddock they're in? Is it a shocking paddock? So you can then use that in your management to start improving fetal survival. And then in the shearing shed, we collect their weights. I don't individually break down fleeces and weigh the pieces and bellies and locks off every fleece. That just creates too much work, and I don't need that information. Because what I'm looking for is those big differences, $10, $20, $50 differences. So we just collect their greasy fleece weight, and then we just allocate pieces, bellies, and locks across everybody. Because if someone cuts a 1 kilo belly and someone cuts a 500 gram belly, you might be talking a difference of $1. And then at the end of the day, $1's not going to make or break the league table. And so this is a video. Graham was involved with a workshop series we ran over COVID, and it wasn't possible for people to come in the shed, so we took a video of it. But this is how we use the wand and the indicator head with a set of scales to collect fleece weights in the shearing shed at shearing time. Well, yeah, so it's using the wand doesn't create a mayhem or a backlog, and a lot of people when you say that you're scanning and weighing your fleeces, they just think it's creating a headache and slows everything down. And occasionally you'll get two shearers that come off at once. So you just ask one shearer, can you just hold your fleece, your sheep for 5 seconds while we just pick up the fleece and weigh that one. But the shearer's quite happy with an extra 5 cents for each sheep. I get my data. Everyone's happy. We just tick along, and then that information then helps me to distribute or to allocate the income once we've sold the wool clip to those individual animals, and we can generate that league table in, and so we know how much money income they've generated. Oops.
Probably 5 minutes. 5
Yep.
minutes, Steve.
Great, Graham. Yeah, we're going all right then. And so with the having the combi clamp there as well too, it then allows you, as I was saying before, to do these other operations. So we try and do multiple things every time we handle the sheep. But the bit that I like is drafting without the dog. It is really good. Dad's in his 80s, and he come up, and every time he comes up, we're doing some sheep work. He stands there at the door, laughing his head off, watching these sheep run through the auto drafter, because there's no dog. I'm just opening the gates, and they're running through, and the machine's sorting them out, and he just thinks it's wonderful. It's really good, and there's not the stress involved there either. But once you've got the information, you can sort your sheep out by any characteristic or any trait you want. It can be age, sex, breed, sire, number of lambs, fetuses, fleece weight, growth rates, whatever you like. The sky's the limit. Whatever you want to put into that machine, you can sort by. And this one here is, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's about how we're using high stock density and long recovery regrazing with our ewes. So we used to be, and we're building soil organic carbon. So in 2017, we registered a soil ERF project with the regulator, and we were using the methodology was building soil organic carbon through change grazing management. So, I wanted to set up my paddocks so that I didn't want to make smaller paddocks, but I wanted to set up my paddocks so I could still utilise them for cropping, for broadacre, but still have the ability to be able to break them down into multiple smaller movements. And so I've come up with an electric fence system that works well for me. So we have we split the paddock in half lengthwise with a electric fence. We energise that, and then we just pull the wires, or polywire or rope or whatever you want to call it off of that, and then strip graze. So there's in this picture there, this was 2020. So there's around about 600 ewes on that strip, and that's 50 metres wide by 200 metres long. And the amount of time that they're there is determined by Graham's animal management. So we look at their rumen, their dung score, but it works out to around about 2 days for that size of mob on that strip. And here's an aerial view of it, so you can actually see. So these lines here, I think you can probably see them. They're from the previous year's strip grazing. So I haven't got me 50 metres exactly right. I just take 11 steps and then pull her up. But you can see them here. And there's a bit of hay involved because occasionally we get stargazers, which is a lack of fibre. So it's just a matter of bringing out a bit of hay, and that prevents that. But essentially we just monitor the animals, and that's how we determine when it's time to shift them. But I try and do it regularly. So I do it at 5 o'clock. It takes me about 40 minutes to shift the fence. So I'll go put up the new fence. They'll all be lined up here waiting. And as soon as I drop that fence, they know when they see me touch it, they know the energizer's off. So as soon as I drop that fence, whoom, they're through, and all you can hear is and they just get in there and they munch away. There's no holding back. And you get the odd one that is a bit of a die feeder. They drop out really quick, and you just realise their value. They go for a holiday. And yeah, it's just it's a really great way. But in those, so in 2022, we then sampled our soil again. And in those 5 years, so this is CA2 is the photo of those ewes that I took the picture of there and showed you those slides of. We built our soil organic carbon in the top 30 centimetres by 42%, and in that lower metre by 128%. And when they crunched the numbers and did the calculations, you know, there's the figures there, around about 50 odd tonnes of organic carbon. So in the 5 years, we've sequestered 6,600 tonnes of soil organic carbon from 15% of our farm. To convert that then into ACCUs or to CO2 equivalents, there's a formula there of multiplying by 3.67. So all of a sudden it becomes quite a rather large figure, and there is a value for that as well too. So, but and what was interesting in 2022, we were part of a emissions program, on-farm trial program, and when we looked at the audit, we were pulling down between 4 and 6 times our annual farm emissions through changed grazing management of 15% of our area. So it's a win. So I'll pose a question to you. As I said, I'm biased. I certainly believe there is heaps of benefit in it, and I certainly would recommend it. But just from showing you that, I'll let you make up your own minds about whether you think there's anything in there that might be of use, or you might find.
Great, thanks, Stephen. That was fantastic. I just wrote down a few things that I thought. The $200 spread. The barriers to adoption. I was pushing you, and then if it didn't work, I'd just withdraw and disappear. So, like all consultants, if it goes wrong, you just disappear. So one of the big things that drives me for this is that a lot of sheep farmers have to get their knees and hips done just from drafting sheep and stuff, and some of those reducing numbers in dry times, that drought resilience that we've been talking about and what we're being funded for in this project, more lambs, less sheep. I just thought all of those things were really good. I really like it that also that barrier of data management that you've used. Elise, who's a bit of a data whiz, and she provides the files for the drafter. So you're not having to do that. You send her the data, she cleans it, she sorts it, sends it back, goes straight into the machine and drafts what you want, how you want, all those sort of things. So, I thought it was fantastic. So I was just going to open up to any questions. Has anyone got any other questions, any thoughts, comments? Yes, Barb.
Thanks for that. That's amazing. I lived through the yelling at dogs and throwing shepherd's crooks era. I'm just wondering about because there's a project in Western Australia with these electronic ear tags, and there's been a bit of resistance and uptake just because of the value of sheep at the moment. That whole system, though, is that expensive? Because I haven't heard any talk about that at all, just the ear tags.
So basically, I was really fortunate in that our timing was perfect, because in 2016, that's when I engaged Graham to do to help us with the farm plan, the business plan, and to look at it. And in 2017, the Victorian state government announced mandatory EID in Victoria, and as a part of that that announcement, they then made grants of up to $10,000 available. And because I had a business plan in place, I applied for the grant, got the $10,000. The auto draft, the scales, the wand, everything I needed to make it work was $20,000. So I basically got it for half price. Then the cost of the tags was subsidised as well. So I think they were 62 or 65 cents at the time. So that was pretty much what we were paying for the non-EID tag. I think they were 55 by the time they were printed. So, so the cost to get into it was $10,000 plus my time. I built the little shed and poured the concrete and everything. I think it cost me $1,500 to put up that little sheep handling station and made a few extra panels. But that really, it's something that was cheaper than a second-hand ute. Certainly cheaper than a side-by-side. And the first year that we used it, and after we had done that league table, identified those low-value sheep, we actually sold them. And we paid $6,000 off the $10,000 that I paid to get into the auto drafter. So we paid the auto drafter off probably in 3 to 4 years, and is now making money. It's the only thing I can truly say on the farm that does actually make money. The only piece of machinery.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's quite enlightening.
But yeah, as far
Right,
as cosmetic tags, it's really superfluous. The value of the data that I'm getting and the management changes it's allowed me to implement, like because I always sell the weather portion off at the same time of the year, and compared to 5 years ago, the same lambs at the same number of days are now 9.7 kilos heavier, and that's done in 5 years with just using the data from the EID.
So is this video shareable at all to the WA government, perhaps?
So that last one that I showed was a part of the program through DECA. So I suppose
I'm just wondering about the whole session.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all acknowledged.
But yeah, it is, and but it needs to be acknowledged as being funded from where we are, and I'll send that through as well. So
great.
So if you acknowledge it, so if anyone wants to send it on to other people, as long as that it's come through RANT, that it was funded through the Drought Hub, that sort of stuff. That's really all we need. Because I think, and I've argued with people a lot, because a lot of the sheepos would say, oh, it's about biosecurity. I go, no, it's not about biosecurity. It's about building a better business. And the tags pay for themselves 10 times over. So fantastic.
And
any other comment, question? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask, how many dogs have you got now, Stephen? Have you sold all the dogs?
None. My dog died at harvest time, actually, from a snake bite. So, my family, everyone was so traumatized for me that my dog had finally died. She had a gammy hip anyway, and she hadn't been doing a lot last 18 months. But dear old Rosie, she was more of a pet than a working dog. She just got to that age, and the snake was faster than she was. And, anyhow, everyone was sort of passing the hat around, and they were going to buy me a pup. And I said, please don't buy me a pup. I'll mourn first, and then I'll buy a pup. But really, I don't need a dog.
Just a question, Ian, while we're going.
Thanks, Stephen. Really interesting. Thank you for that. You certainly put forward a very strong business case. Is there a scale of which an operation needs to be to actually make it worthwhile?
Well,
so you're running a number of thousand sheep.
No. I've got 800 breeding ewes, and then 800. I've got 450 maidens that I retain. Plus others. So I dropped my numbers back to around about 1,200 over the summertime to reduce the amount of feed that I've got to buy. And then when my lambs come in, my numbers blow out to about 2,200 during the winter, and that's when I've got all my feed. And then I select the ones I want to keep. I sell excess maidens. I sell the cast for age ewes, keep what I want, and then drop my numbers back down again. So
your base herd of about over 1,000, and you're swelling to 1,000, 2,000.
1,200 is my base herd. And what I'm looking at doing now is dropping out as I'm bringing subdividing more paddocks in with the electric fence. I found 200 metre wide strips is manageable. You get much wider than 200 metres, and it gets too heavy dragging tapes and pushing tread-ins and stuff in. 200 is a nice width. So as I'm bringing other paddocks in and into 200 metre wide strips, I'm just reducing the amount of crop that I do, because it's even though I might be making as much money, I'm keeping more of it. It's more profitable and less risk. And if there's a frost, it doesn't matter. I'm eating it with the sheep, so who cares?
Mm.
As long as I get paid for me weight gain, that's really what I'm after.
Yep. I suppose what I'm getting at is if you've only got 100 sheep, the return on investment is going to be much, much slower. So you're at the scale at which it works really well.
Yep.
But for other producers that are, at what point does it become a reasonable return on investment within 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I couldn't say, but I'd think that if you're at that size, I'd probably say look at a manual 3-way drafter and have a set of scales. It'll be a bit slower, but you can still record the same amount of information, and you can pick up manual 3-way drafters now for a couple $1,000. I think the Prattleys now they're getting close to 30. I think they're 26 or 28 by the time you set them up. But quite honestly, my daughter Louise, she's the ag teacher at Groke. The kids down there are doing it, and they're just holding them manually. They've only got 10 sheep or whatever, but they're applying the same principles and weighing the sheep and just holding them back in a little hand race and collecting the data and setting up their strip grazing and running their few sheep. And then when it comes holiday time, they just hand them back to the farmer next door, and he looks after them. And then but the kids are learning about it, and they love it. The animals get calm too, and they get used into a routine. You're removing a lot of stress that you're otherwise creating when you try and do it with salivating dogs and noise and stuff like that. Like I said, it really changes the nature of the animal and yourself too when you pull that stress out. It just makes it so much easier.
And do you have any other climate triggers that will invoke a decision to sell at a certain point?
Basically, it's grazing days. I found that I did have more sheep. I had 1,200 breeding ewes that I retained, and I found that I was having to keep a lot more feed up the hand for the summer, and that was the tricky bit. But once I started getting rid of those low performing ewes, my average return per ewe started to go up because I was dropping them out, and because I know how much it cost me. It cost me to maintain a ewe for 12 months. It cost me $20. That's a mature ewe. For a maiden, it cost me $26, and for a lamb, it's $28. That's how much I spend on each animal to look after it. So if I've got a ewe that's only making me $40 and I'm spending $20 on it, I've only made $20 from her. If I've got a ewe that's made me $240 worth of income and I'm spending $20 on it, I made $220. So you get rid of those tail enders straight away, and you'll start saving money because you're not spending $20 to look after that ewe that's only going to make you $20. It sounds a bit cold-hearted and ruthless, but at the end of the day, I've got to run a business.
It does take the empathy out of it, that's for sure.
And it does. But I still do like my animals, and I have to say I do actually like sheep now. One time I couldn't stand it. We used to call them paddock lice and all sorts of derogatory terms. But,
now they're the money makers.
They are.
I really find too, and could you just confirm this, Steve, that it's much easier to reduce numbers when you've got that data, you know what their value is. It
Totally.
sort of takes, people seem to trigger earlier to reduce numbers. And I always felt that took the emotion out of it a bit about that decision and not blaming yourself and things like that. So,
and the other thing that you need to do is use your, I don't know, MLA have got, if you're registered and everything like that, they've got the free SIBO Labs total standing dry matter map that you can look at, and that's what I use. I just look at it and I go, wow, I've got 6 tons of dry matter in that paddock. I've got me 800 ewes. I don't know how many grazing days I've got. And then I look at the rest of my farm where they're going to move to. And if the rain started to taper off and we haven't got the feed there, well, then I say, righto, well, I'm just going to lighten off 50 or 100 ewes. There's a few old ones there. To have a chat, to give them out a call. What are ewes making in the market at the moment? It gives me a number. And I look at my spreadsheet and I can say, oh, well, actually, I don't need to pull that many out. So I might drop the value in the auto drafter down to, $20 below the market value just to pull out the right amount of use. And that's what I'll do. So you can constantly just tweak your numbers every few weeks or every month if you want to. It's just not hard because you got the information. You know what they're worth. You know what feed you've got ahead of you. It's just so easy to plan.
Excellent.
Very interesting. Thank you, Stephen.
Question? Yeah, it's really, really good, Stephen. That was fantastic. And I think the people will be wanting the video and watching that. So, Celia, did you want to?
Just one more, Stephen. You might have said this and I missed it. Was how many how many strands do you have for your sheep?
I use 4. It took me 3 weeks to work it out. Because my Graham talks about training animals, and it's just like I haven't got time to train, so I just kept pulling up wires until they pinged the right way. Because I found with 2 wires, what would happen? They'd stick their head down to get a bite of grass under. They get a zap on the back of the neck, and they go forward. They'd end up on the wrong side. So then I tried 3, and 80% of them stayed in the paddock, and 20% got through the fence. So, and I thought, well, I've got to walk up and back anyway. So that's what I do. I clip the hot wire on, walk back, and I've made up these things called J-sticks, and I've just got old MIG reels. I've got a MIG welder in the workshop and all these plastic reels laying around. So I've made a stick, and then it's got the reels on there. And so I'll hook it on, walk up, hook it around the reel, come back and hook on the fence, then grab the second reel and walk out, hook it around and pull it back. And then every 10 metres, I'll put my tread-ins in. And that holds them. I've got other videos there. I went down there and I just sat there. I've also got Wi-Fi cameras, and so that's really great. So I can check them while I'm having my brekkie or lunch. I can log on and have a look and see what they're up to. But they'd really tried my patience because I've been trying to hold them in, and I thought, I'm going for 4, and we're going to crank this Energizer up. I want to see some sparks. And I tuned in on the Wi-Fi camera, and it comes up and bang! And it worked. It's brilliant.
Fantastic, Stephen. So that's the end of the hour. So I'd like to, on your behalf, thank you from everyone's behalf. Oh, you had a quick one, Kirsten?
Yeah.
I thought you were
just
waving goodbye.
I wasn't waving to you. No, it's just the matter of the energizing of a fence when you've built up these more mature pastures. You have real issues with shorting out of fences with the longer, thicker grass. And because you're running lower strands with the sheep, how do you work through that, or what issues, or
They all get a bite. I don't know. I've never had that. The first year, I thought the same thing. I've got a little 6-foot slash on the 3-point linkage, and I just set my little light bar, and I just went and mowed some strips every 50 metres, and then did that. Second year, I couldn't be bothered doing it, and I don't know. It just works. I suppose after they've had a couple of bites, the memory's there. They see the tape and they just don't go near it. I don't know, but because I've got Wi-Fi enabled Energizer, I've got it set for I think it's 20 amps. If it draws over that, it sends me an alert on my phone, and when I'm grazing, I just move it, pull it through the grass and stuff I've got there, which might be half a metre tall, but I don't get any alerts, so it must work all right. I don't know.
Great. Okey-doke. Thanks, everyone. I hope that was all. We can cover off next week on any questions from today, and go through that. So thanks, Stephen, on everyone's behalf. And
No worries. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it.
happy.
Thank you very much,
It's
Stephen.
been great.
Thank you.
Oh,
It's been
Stephen.
great. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks,
Very good.
everyone.
Thank
Cheerio.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.